Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. And in this series, in part 2, we're going to carry on with where we left off. So yeah, let's get going. So as before, I'm just using my small little brush. I'm actually using the liner brush here, just to fill in some of the hairs. And it is important just to keep an eye on the reference to see where the shadows are. In this method of painting, I'm going to come with my airbrush a little later and just fix the shadows. So it's not too important where you put the hairs, as long as you put them in the right direction. Here I'm just concentrating on the part next to the nose. You can see the highlight that's over there. So I'm just coming with my liner brush. In fact, I use quite a few different brushes just to get this effect. And just carrying on layering the fine hairs and keeping an eye out for the direction that the hairs are. That's the most important thing, in fact. But as I mentioned before, you can change it later because we are using a layering technique. Here I'm just coming with my airbrush, as I mentioned. Just putting in the shadows where I find them in the reference. So if you find that you've put too much white down, don't worry about it. You can just come in a little later. And please don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel if you're liking this kind of content. I've just got this piece of paper next to me. So because the paint is so thin that I can't actually see what I'm doing, so I'm just checking that it is still spraying. I'm just using my no-name brand 180 0.2 nozzle airbrush in this. Here I'm coming back with my liner brush just to finalize some of the dark parts. And as I mentioned before, there is no quick way of doing this. You can't use a different sort of brush. You have to use this very small, minute, detailed brush if you want this kind of detail. If I haven't mentioned it before, this video is not sponsored, so any links that I post are just for your reference, and any parts or any materials or brushes that I use are purely for your reference. Just keep studying your reference photo and try and get the shading in the most accurate position. You of course won't be able to copy it exactly, but I think that's what art is all about, putting your own spin on it and getting it as close as you possibly can. So the other side is basically a rinse and repeat of the previous side, so I won't spend too much time on this. Moving on to the nose, I found the easiest way is just to put a whole bunch of dots down and then coming in later to define the very dark parts and the very light parts. So I'm just putting down some initial random dots, and then I'll come with some shading a little later. And I found that's actually the easiest way to do a dog's nose, is just by applying random dots and then going over it again, bringing out the highlights or the shadows or any defined lines that you find in the reference. So now I'm coming in on the second layer, redefining the brights, and because this paint is fairly thin, as it dries it sinks back slightly, so that gives you a chance to build up the highlights without overdoing it. And I'm not using a white here, I'm using a grey, about 2 or 3 shades darker, just to leave me some room for the final highlights a little later. At this point I'm going to just wash over a very weak black, just to start shading in the right parts. And just take your time, do the best you can, and you can always come back and change it if you've gone too far. You can just add some white back in, or some dark as you need. But yeah, here's some real-time video of the actual speed. Moving on to the ear, I used a bigger brush here because the fur is a bit out of focus, so we don't want the super sharp lines as we have in the face, and we also want to add some dimension to the painting by adding some depth, the parts that are far away. So as you can see how thin this paint really is, that I'm going to wash over the top. Just want to define some of the shadows, and I'll come back with the airbrush a little later once again, just to blend all of this nicely back together. So I'm just going over it just to very thin, just to define some of the shadows. So the other side is basically a rinse and repeat of the previous side, so I'll just speed through it. But you can pause the video if you want to see anything in particular. And I'm just doing some of the muzzle part here now, leaving some shadows for the whiskers a little later. Again, using the liner brush for the very small details. And here's some real-time footage of how slow this process actually is. Unfortunately, there's just no other way. And just as a reference, here's what we're working towards, and the results are well worth the effort, as you'll see later. So guys, please subscribe, like, and if you want to press the notifications for the next episode, please do so. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching.